The anime begins at Dahlia Academy, where there's a confrontation between two rival nations. The first one called the Black Dogs, led by our male protagonist Romeo Inuzuka, and the second one called the White Cats, led by our female protagonist Juliet Persia. While the students of each nation fight against their enemies, the protagonists fight each other, although the whole fight doesn't last long as it's stopped by the White Cat's prefect named Anne, who threatens everyone with informing the Black Dog's prefect if they don't cease the fight. After this, in the Black Dog's classroom, Romeo is devastated, and despite his friend Hasuki's attempts to cheer him up, he simply ignores her and leaves. It turns out the boy is feeling down because he's deeply in love with Juliet and has been since they were in elementary school. However, he's never been able to confess his feelings because they were always fighting like they did this morning, and also because the girl has a close friend named Scott, who is always affectionate towards her, which understandably bothers the protagonist. On the girl's side, while practicing her strength by fighting her classmates, she can't help but think of Romeo, as the reason she strives to be strong is because the boy always underestimates her. After Juliet's training as she exits the gym, other classmates inform her that some rebellious kids from the Black Dogs vandalized the White Cat's mansion, so the boys suggest teaching them a lesson. In response, the girl decides not to be harsh with them and reprimands them in an elegant manner without being rude, which makes Romeo admire her and develop affection for her upon witnessing this act, although he's forced to leave after being noticed. Hours later, Juliet is unexpectedly attacked by two members of the Black Dogs, and while she could easily defeat them, she doesn't anticipate the pepper spray attack from a third member. Among the three, they don't hesitate to try to take her life to achieve a victory for the Black Dogs. However, Romeo intervenes to save her, and after this, the attackers flee. The downside of our boy saving Juliet is that she believes he was her attacker, so she leaves the scene crying inconsolably, making the boy feel that all his plans to confess his feelings to her are pointless. That's why, upon returning to the Black Dog's mansion and encountering those who attacked Juliet, he doesn't hesitate to beat them up to teach them a lesson for messing with his girl. However, while doing this, a nun appears before his eyes. This note is from the girl who asks to meet him at the fountain in the center of the square, to which he, thinking it's a love confession from her, doesn't hesitate to attend. Once in the square, they gaze at each other from afar, and Juliet proposes a duel to the boy to prove who's stronger, although she first demands explanations about what happened when she was attacked. She insists he answer if he was her attacker or if he was actually the one who saved her, and if the latter is the case, she wouldn't want to know he saved her out of pity for seeing her weak. Faced with these words, Romeo remembers how they used to always fight in the past because she wanted to be the strongest to change the world for the better and also to impress her father, Turkish Persia, who was a nobleman from the West. For this reason, the protagonist decides to accept the duel, and in the midst of it, he confesses his feelings for her, while telling her that he never saw her as weak as she thought he did, because he always wanted to protect her because he truly loves her. After this, he mentions that if she wants to change the world as she desired, he'll be willing to help her only if she becomes his girlfriend, even if it means betraying his nation. Faced with this, Juliet is speechless, and the only thing she can think to do is throw the boy into the fountain and call him airhead for everything he said. Although after this, she agrees to be his girlfriend only on the condition that the relationship remains secret, to which Romeo cries tears of happiness as he never thought she would accept his proposal. The next day, a new confrontation between the protagonists and their groups outside Dahlia Academy begins. However, for Romeo, this is just an excuse to see Juliet, and he doesn't hesitate to take her away to be alone. Juliet, on the other hand, doesn't want this as she takes the confrontations very seriously, so she considers going back to the academy. In response, the protagonist stops her by taking her hand, but then Hasuki appears on the scene, so he's forced to pretend to hurt Juliet, although he ends up seriously injuring her. As a consequence of this, she kicks him, knocking him out of the fight. Because of this, Romeo tries to apologize to her by giving her a rosary, although this attempt to apologize leads him to illegally enter the White Cat's mansion. When Scott notices his presence, he doesn't hesitate to attack him, and they both end up falling from a height. Hours later, the protagonist wakes up in the Black Dog's mansion, where Hasuki explains that the others are going to confront Juliet because they found out she was the one who threw him from the height. Obviously, this wasn't the case, so Romeo runs as fast as he can to prevent the girl from being hurt by her classmates. Upon seeing him running towards her, she doesn't hesitate to flee as she saw him and his classmates coming for her. However, Scott appears to stop them and encourages everyone to have a duel, and since the protagonist doesn't feel like it, Scott teases him to encourage him to fight. This angers the boy so much that he accidentally breaks the rosary he intended to give to Juliet. This leaves him devastated to the point that he doesn't hesitate to take a statue from the place to use it against everyone, defeating both his enemies and his friends. However, because he tore down the statue, Romeo is punished and forced to cut the grass in the square with his hands. Fortunately, Juliet arrives just in time to keep him company and offers him an intimate boat ride. During this ride, the boy apologizes to her for breaking the rosary he intended to give her as an apology gift. But when she takes it, she tells him that it doesn't matter that it's broken because she appreciates the gesture and the intentions of wanting to apologize. Therefore, she doesn't hesitate to give him her own rosary and asks him to take good care of it, as it belonged to her mother and means a lot to her because of all the sentimental value it holds. Furthermore, by giving him something so important, she shows that she cares for him. He, on the other hand, cares more about the gesture than the rosary itself, so he disregards the object unintentionally, and since this is important to her, she throws the boy out of the boat and leaves him alone in the lake. The next day, Hasuki invites Romeo to go out to the city center. However, he already planned to do the same with a distant relative, only to find out it's actually Juliet who disguised herself as a supposed relative of the protagonist under the fictitious name of Chulio. This devastates Hasuki to the point that she faints, giving the boy time to go out to the city with Juliet for a romantic date. Unfortunately, this plan falls apart when several members of the Black Dogs notice Julio's presence as they've never seen him before, so they follow him everywhere, completely ruining the date planned by our boy. Everything gets worse when he takes the girl away to the House of Horrors to be alone, and she gets so scared being there that she hits him and runs away from the place. After this, he tries to follow her, but his classmates tell him that she returned to the academy, so he has no choice but to lament ruining the date. Then his classmates Maru, Tosa, and Koitsuji, seeing him emotionally vulnerable, don't hesitate to get revenge on him for humiliating them before when he saved Juliet, so they throw him into the sea. Shortly after, she arrives at the scene to give them what they deserve, and hours later, being alone with him, she explains that the date was perfect for her, as she learned a lot about him in the city, and she ends up saying that she would love to have another date. This makes the boy happy, so he tries to hug her affectionately, but then Scott arrives just to ruin the moment, so the boy is forced to pretend to fight with her, resulting in them actually fighting. On another completely new day, Romeo wants to celebrate his first-month anniversary with Juliet, who agrees only on the condition that it be in 3 days. Just then, Scott and Hasuki arrive on the scene, so the couple is forced to pretend to fight. Putting this aside, the protagonist's friends inform them that a student named Chartru, whom they will call Char, has returned to the academy as she was in the West. This girl turns out to be a princess nicknamed the Tyrant Princess, because she mistreats her own faction, that is, the White Cats, forcing them to treat her like a queen. However, on the Black Dog's side, they don't welcome her as she would like, so she focuses especially on our boy, threatening him with revealing a photo where he is seen with Juliet, which would confirm that they are dating. Therefore, he is forced to obey all her whims so that she doesn't reveal the photo, as that would have consequences for his relationship with Juliet. In this way, Char controls the protagonist by blowing a whistle where, every time he hears it, he must run to her and fulfill her whims, no matter how embarrassing or dangerous they may be. This prevents him from being with his girlfriend, so he has no choice but to be Char's faithful dog until the point where she lets her guard down, and he takes the opportunity to give her a taste of her own medicine, as he needs to free himself from her before the anniversary day with his partner arrives. In the following days, the boy continues to fulfill the princess's whims one after another, but unfortunately, he fails to find out any weakness. Although for a moment he suspects that something is going on between her and Juliet. That's why later he asks Juliet directly about it, to which she reveals that Char and she have been friends since they were little, only everything changed since the princess went to the West and returned recently. For this reason, the protagonist sneaks into Char's room to find out more, but he's forced to hide when she suddenly arrives. Char suspects that the boy is in her room, so she starts looking for him and is surprised to see him in her secret hiding place, which is a mirror. This hiding place has several photos of Juliet inside, so Romeo finally found the princess's weak spot, which is that she secretly loves Juliet, so he doesn't hesitate to use one of the photos to threaten Char if she doesn't leave him alone. She gets so angry at this that she comments that she has been in love with Juliet since they were little, and she hates knowing that she preferred to be with an airhead boy like him rather than with her. To make things harder for her, Juliet appears knocking on the door, so Char gives up and thinks it's best to reveal her secret. However, Romeo cooperates with her, and together they manage to hide the photos and prevent Juliet from knowing the princess's big secret. After this, both have an emotional conversation about how much they love each other and appreciate being together again after so long. Shortly after, Juliet mentions that she has plans with someone, so she leaves without further ado, while Char, knowing that these plans are with the protagonist, talks to him to ask him to prepare for their date. And by the way, she asks him why he helped her hide her secret, when she has been treating him badly all these days. He replies that he helped her because he knows what it feels like not to be able to say, "I love you" to someone you love. Days later, at the Black Dog's mansion, the protagonist informs everyone that intensive study training is approaching, during which they study for 72 hours straight in order to beat the white cats in the exams. He doesn't plan to study alone, so he didn't hesitate to convince Juliet to become Trulio again and study with him, and strangely, Maru also studies with them, as it seems he has a strange fascination with Trulio. Just then, Hasuki arrives at the scene, who will act as the director of the training, and she doesn't hesitate to scold her dear friend for bringing Julio, as he is from junior high and is not at the same level as them. Although our boy convinces Hasuki by explaining that Julio has the same educational level as them. Minutes later, the study training begins and our protagonist falls asleep seconds after it starts, so Hasuki punishes him by forcing him to open his eyes, and after that, the boy prepares to pay attention to what she explains. At dusk, he says goodbye to Juliet, who returns home through a hideout, and after this, Char appears behind him and scolds him, as she found out that he forces Juliet to dress up as a boy to pass as someone else. In addition to this, she lets him know that he must be careful with Hasuki, as Juliet might think that this girl and he have something more than just a friendship. In response, the protagonist tells her that Hasuki and he are just friends and he trusts her completely. This makes Char think, because if the boy trusts his friend, he would have already told her everything about his romance with Juliet. This is just what happens when our protagonist reveals that he is dating Juliet, as the girl, following the Black Dog's regulations, pursues the boy with a sword to finish him off. Juliet, upon seeing the chase, doesn't hesitate to follow them to find out what is happening. When she and Romeo meet, he tries to explain to her that Hasuki wants to take his life after learning his secret, but then the girl appears behind the protagonist and almost cuts off his head, although he dodges the attack, so she changes her target and goes to attack Juliet. But she is saved by Char, who arrived after seeing that Romeo put her friend's life in danger. For this reason, she wants to do the same as Hasuki, that is, end the boy's life, to which he, cornered by the two girls, decides to take Juliet and run away from the place. Once they reach a cliff, the protagonist, with the motivating words of Juliet, decides to stop running away and confront Hasuki directly. Upon finding him, she gives him a strong blow with her sword, but since the sword was fake, he only injures the protagonist. He, for his part, is glad that his friend used a fake sword and not a real one, because in his heart he knew that Hasuki would never truly harm him. But it is overshadowed by Juliet's sudden fall from the cliff, and who goes to her rescue is clearly Romeo. Although behind him, Hasuki and Char jump to save them. Char and Juliet are unharmed, as are the protagonist and Hasuki, although they have a strong conversation because she, seeing how he jumped to rescue Juliet without hesitation, calls him airhead and tells him that she hates him, as she doesn't understand how he let himself be fooled by a white dog's girl. The next day, our boy looks around to see if Hasuki didn't tell everyone his secret, and he is relieved to know that she didn't. When he meets her and sees her acting as if nothing had happened yesterday, he is glad because they can continue to be friends despite the problem they had the day before, although she lets him know that if he tries to flirt with Juliet in public, she won't hesitate to punish him. The days go by, and Romeo asks Juliet to prepare a bento for him, although she misunderstands his words due to how he said them and thinking he's talking about something intimate, she doesn't hesitate to hit him. Nevertheless, she starts cooking the set bento for the boy, but everything goes wrong, so she ends up asking the cook for help. In this way, she hands the cook's bento to the protagonist, and he is so happy that he opens his mouth expecting her to give him the food, but ends up eating Char's shoe, who interrupted the romantic scene to confiscate the bento out of jealousy, as Juliet never did something like that for him. Similarly, in the midst of his escape with the bento, it slips from his hands and ends up falling on Scott's head, who, seeing Juliet claiming it's her bento, thinks she prepared it for him, so he doesn't hesitate to want to eat it with her. However, Romeo arrives just in time to knock out Scott and claim the bento as his own, so they both end up having a confrontation over keeping the bento. The confrontation ends with the protagonist throwing a tree at Scott, causing the bento to fly and land in the stable, where some pigs eat it. Obviously, this affects both boys. Scott is taken by Char, while Romeo receives burnt cookies from Juliet, as she confesses that she didn't make the bento, but the cook did. But she did make the cookies, so the boy doesn't hesitate to eat them no matter how bad they taste. Hours later, the Black Dog group trains for the upcoming sports festival, but the only ones not training are Maru and his friends, as they plan to play with their rules. Likewise, the protagonist does not train either, as he will not participate because they lost the last festival because of him. On the other hand, Scott does train, as he wants to ensure he is the best player to be able to dance with Juliet after the festival. However, our boy puts a stop to him by confronting him. Although this is stopped by a strange student named Somali, who comes along with her friend Abby. These two are students with strong personalities, while Somali is a tough girl who doesn't hesitate to protect Abby because she considers him her boyfriend. He, on the other hand, is a complete narcissist who doesn't hesitate to try to invite Juliet to dance with him after the festival. Obviously, she refuses because she doesn't like egocentric guys, but this is enough reason for both the protagonist and Scott to feel jealousy and hatred towards him. At nightfall, Romeo receives a letter from Juliet, asking for a meeting in the Academy's courtyard in order for him to help her train for the track race. Obviously, the boy prepares all night to see Juliet the next day and help her with this, and seeing her totally determined to give her all to be a best player in the festival, he gives his best effort and together they do a good job. For this reason, the girl is surprised that he did a good job this time, as she reminds him that in the previous festival, everything went wrong for him in the individual race, so now she convinces him to participate in the new festival, as she believes he has a chance to win. To convince him, she tells him that if he wins, she will do whatever he asks. That's why he agrees and starts training on his own, and on the day of the festival, he is very happy to participate, although Abby and Somali have plans to ruin the festival, as they want to be best players. The director of the Black Dogs and the director of the White Cats kick off the sports festival, where the first to face off are the rookies from each group in the tug-of-war competition, which seemed to be won by the White Cats due to Somali's superhuman strength, but they ended up losing because she got distracted by a compliment from Abby. The second competition is the track race, which is between two amateur members from each group, in this case, Maru and Char. She ends up winning with a great advantage because, being a princess, she must have her two servants carry her to the finish line. After several more competitions, everything ends in a tie that will be decided in the second part of the festival. In this second part, Somali injures Juliet in the middle of the down-the-pole competition, and this affects her physical condition to the point that in the next competition, which is the 100-meter race, she ends up falling before reaching the finish line due to the pain in her leg from Somali's blow. As if this weren't enough, Abby encourages all the White Cats to speak ill of her to make her feel bad and quit the game, and this works well, as once in the infirmary, Juliet cries inconsolably, feeling like a weak girl unable to be strong and giving up on the title of the best player in the festival. Faced with this, Romeo doesn't intend to let Abby get away with it, so continuing with the sports festival, now in the horse battle competition, he asks Maru to help him defeat Abby and Somali, although the boy doesn't feel like helping him as he doesn't want to be the boy's horse. Nonetheless, Hasuki takes the lead for the Black Dogs by eliminating most of the White Cats, although she is easily defeated by Abby and Somali, who use their cheap tricks. Thus, only our boy and Maru remain in the competition, and as they can't agree, Julio appears just in time to cheer on Maru, who didn't hesitate to agree with the protagonist just for Maru's sake, and between the two of them, they eliminated all the remaining White Cats, leaving only Abby and Somali. These two feel cornered when Maru mentions that he knows they cheated by putting sleeping pills in the drinks, while Romeo gets angry when Somali attacks him with a kick, revealing her modified shoes, and it was these shoes that injured Juliet. For that reason, he, with all his fury, grabs the two and throws them into the stands, and this way the presenter declares victory for the Black Dogs. However, the protagonist lets him know that they haven't won completely yet, as they still need to defeat Juliet, so he calls her to face him. She goes along with Char, and both are determined to prove who will be the best player of the festival. When the confrontation between the protagonists begins, both give their maximum effort, resulting in a tie in strength. However, the boy accidentally touches the girl's melons, causing her to fall to the ground and be out of the competition. Juliet ends up winning without doing absolutely anything, while Romeo is punished by his peers, who force him to stay in front of the fountain in the square to reflect on his fondness for melons. Fortunately for him, the girl arrives to keep him company, which obviously surprises him, as she is supposed to be at the festival dance. But it turns out she escaped from there to dance with him, as well as to thank him for defending her by giving Abby and Somali what they deserved. Weeks later, our protagonist falls ill after the festival, as he spent the following days helping everyone, which caused him stress. That's why Hasuki, as the new leader of the Black Dogs, takes care of him, although she is soon dragged away by her companions due to an inconvenience, leaving Romeo alone. But luckily for the boy, Juliet disguised as Julio keeps him company and sets out to take care of him like any good girlfriend. In doing so, she notices an adult magazine in the room. Although this magazine is not his, but Koetsuji's, so he tries to explain to the girl, but only ends up saying vulgarities that cause discomfort for both of them, so she ends up leaving the room under the excuse that she will go get food and water for him. Thus, after looking for these two things in the mansion's dining room, she explores the place a bit and encounters Maru himself, who confronts her as he wants to know if she's a boy or a girl, as well as what grade she belongs to. Faced with this, she throws the water she was carrying at him and flees the scene, ending up in the girl's bathroom, where she ends up soaked. When the girls notice her presence, she is forced to flee once again until she returns to Romeo's room. Once here, she changes her clothes, but then Koetsuji knocks on the door demanding his magazine, which scares the girl so much that she hugs the boy, and as a result, he faints after experiencing too much heat. Likewise, he wakes up minutes later completely recovered as a song that Juliet sang to him helped him get better, as it turns out that the song is the same one his mother used to sing to him when he was little. That's why the boy thanks her for accompanying him and helping him recover, although she responds that she didn't come here precisely for that, but that she came to see him as she felt the need to be with him. Obviously, she says this while her cheeks turn red, and the boy, upon hearing this, gets so excited that he gets feverish again, but a fever of love. Days later, we meet the twins Tyria and Kochu Wan, two authority figures of the Black Dogs, who despite being 14 years old and in secondary school, hold the title of prefects for being so intelligent that they are in an advanced class. They notify Eru Imuzuka, another prefect, that a festival on campus is taking place and they want to attend. Meanwhile, the protagonist and Juliet, while hiding from their classmates, talk about this festival because the boy wants to attend with her. Although she tells him she can't because she doesn't want to dress up as a boy again, fearing Maru might try something against her. Because of this, Romeo starts crying, hoping the girl will fall into his trap and agree to go to the festival with him, which eventually works, leaving him overjoyed. Out of nowhere, Kacho falls from a tree into the boy's arms, making her uncomfortable, so she calls Tyria, and together they give the protagonist a lesson. Obviously, this angers the boy because he doesn't feel obliged to endure the blows of two girls. However, everything becomes more complicated when Hasuki mentions that these two girls are prefects and could exile him from the academy. Romeo seems unconcerned as they are still just two simple girls. But then Kachu lets him know that she has a feeling he's hiding something as she saw him talking to someone moments ago. In response, he tells her he was talking to his aunt friends, which makes him seem like a complete antisocial. And if that wasn't enough, after he gets rid of them, he finds them in his room, where Kaku once again lets him know that he's hiding something, this time by showing him Juliet's rosary. For this reason, he decides to flee from them, and since the campus festival has just started, they decide to go there to watch over the students as Eru ordered them, and in passing, search for the boy. In this way, the twins search the entire festival for Romeo, and easily find him since he didn't know they would look for him there. Because of this, he flees and hides in a forest, and Julie, on her part, flees from Scott and ends up in the same forest, where the two finally meet. Unfortunately, the twins continue to pursue Romeo, so now the two of them must escape from them. After a long chase through all the festival stands, they end up hiding in a barrel from where the protagonist can see how the twins are sad for not having been able to find him. Then two owners of two stands have a dispute, to which the twins, as prefects, intervene and arrest them to establish peace at the festival. However, they still feel sad for not having completed the easy mission of finding Romeo. This is why he comes out of hiding and challenges them to a battle, where if he wins, they will be his masters. This motivates the twins to try their best to defeat the boy in all the festival games and accidentally end up enjoying these games. After winning the battle, Romeo lets them know their reward, which is that they can go out with him to play anytime they want, as he noticed how sad they were a moment ago and realized that it wasn't because they were looking for him to teach him a lesson for running away from them, but because they were looking for him to play with him. After all, they're just little girls. This touches the hearts of the twins, so they bid him farewell, saying they will see him soon, while he, after all this, remembers that he has to watch the fireworks with Julie. In this way, the festival ends and Romeo looks for Julie in the barrel where she was hiding, expecting her to scold him for not watching the fireworks with her. To his surprise, she doesn't scold him. In fact, she's happy that he helped the twins have some fun and let go of their prefect roles, showing a more sensitive side to her. The boy feels flattered by this, so to celebrate the fireworks they couldn't see, he lights some small fireworks, and they end up having their own festival. Changing scenes completely in the office of the Black Dogs, it is revealed that Eru has the last name Inuzuka, which means he is the protagonist's brother. July 1st is approaching, the day Juliet will celebrate her birthday. This is why Char is very happy, as she wants to give her friend a special gift, and likewise our protagonist also wants to do the same, although he doesn't know what to give her. Luckily, the twins appeared just in time to help him with this, as they had the task of doing some shopping in the city market, so they give it to the boy to help him. In this way, Romeo goes through the market looking for the perfect gift for his girlfriend and ends up finding a cute toy kitten. However, this same kitten is found by Char, so they have a dispute to keep the toy. However, a policeman arrives to stop the dispute, and upon seeing that Princess Char is involved, he doesn't hesitate to want to take her away to protect her, as several Black Dog students are causing trouble in the market. This leaves Char not knowing what to do, and the only thing that occurs to her is to disguise Romeo to make him look like a white cat student, and she appoints him as her escort. Obviously, the boy doesn't agree with this, as he doesn't intend to be the girl's escort. although he's forced to do so after she blackmails him with helping him find the perfect gift for Juliet. Char forcibly takes Romeo to a girl store where she tries to make him nervous by showing him that could be Juliet's gift. After this, they continue to tour the market looking for the perfect gift for Juliet, when suddenly it starts to rain, so they are forced to seek shelter. The rain completely soaks them both, especially Char, as everything underneath her clothes can be seen. She doesn't hesitate to use this to flirt with Romeo and ignite his passions in order to make him stop being Juliet's boyfriend. Despite this attempt, he doesn't fall for her game and doesn't hesitate to gently tap her forehead to reprimand her and make it clear that he would never betray his girlfriend, let alone with her best friend. Faced with this, the girl returns the tap and decides to leave, freeing him from his forced escort duty. Although shortly after, the girl is intercepted by two strange individuals belonging to the Black Dogs who try to kill her. After freeing herself from one of them, Romeo arrives just in time at the scene to play his escort role again, so he deals with the other individual, something that surprises Char. For this reason, she asks him why he saved her, to which he responds that he didn't do it for her but for Juliet, as she might feel bad if she found out her friend got hurt in any way. These words amuse the princess because she finds it funny that the boy is so clueless as to save his enemy just to make his girlfriend happy. Later, she confesses to him that the mistreatment she received from her today was because Juliet herself told her she wanted to spend her birthday with him, which was a hard blow for her. After this confession, the girl thanks him for saving her earlier by giving him a gift, which is a set of women's something that clearly the boy doesn't need. Upon returning to the Black Dog's mansion before entering, a note falls from the sky, which the boy grabs, and he is glad that it is a note from Juliet, who asked to meet him in the library. Once here, she timidly invites him to spend her birthday with her and hopes it will be a good birthday, unlike previous birthdays where he always ruined everything with the other students. This lifts Romeo's spirits, so he asks her what she would like as a gift, since he unfortunately couldn't get something to her liking. She replies that she would like some accessories, to which he agrees to buy them, and he is so happy to know what to give her that he happily returns to his room. But not everything is rosy, as before entering his room, he finds Hasuki totally paralyzed, and as he approaches her to see what's wrong, he looks into his room and sees none other than his older brother Eru and the twins, which completely shocks our boy as he doesn't understand what they are doing in his room. Eru takes the first step, asking him where he got the rosary he found in his room, to which Hasuki jumps into the scene to help the protagonist. But then, when Eru asks about the women's, Hasuki abandons Romeo and leaves him to his fate. Unable to answer, Eru begins to suspect that his brother is dating a girl from the White Cat, so he doesn't hesitate to grab him by the neck to force him to confess. However, the twins take the protagonist's side and scold Eru for being so rough with his brother. Because of this, Eru has no choice but to leave Romeo alone, although he lets him know that he will be under surveillance for a week to clear up whether he is dating a girl from the White Cats or not. This is bad news because Juliet's long-awaited birthday is within a week. Days pass, and Romeo is forced to go everywhere, accompanied by Eru and the twins, which catches Juliet's attention, especially when she notices that he ignores her every time they pass by. To make matters worse, the protagonist continues to be mistreated by his brother, who forces him to train relentlessly, leaving him completely drained of energy and strength, so Hasuki takes care of his health. Although all this is part of his plan to see Juliet, since he has been feigning false remorse in front of his brother for the past few days, so that he lowers his guard and can take advantage of this to escape and go see Juliet on her birthday. The day before the girl's birthday, Romeo escapes from the mansion of the Black Dogs to see her, confident that his brother is asleep. But to his misfortune, he encounters him outside the mansion. Facing this, the boy does not hesitate to confront him for the first time in his life. Although being weaker, he ends up being knocked out by a simple but hard blow from his brother, and after this he is taken to a cabin where his brother locks him up to reflect on his actions. This is something Eru has been doing with Romeo since they were children. So knowing this, days ago, Romeo asked the twins to free him when this happens, and now that it happened, they came to his rescue. In this way, our protagonist rushes to meet Juliet as fast as he can, but due to the beating his brother gave him, he ends up falling to the ground weakened. Fortunately, Juliet appears just in time to catch him, and now that they have finally met, she reveals to him that Hasuki told her everything about how they will be expelled if their romance is discovered. For this reason, she hugs him tightly while crying and asks him to stay away from her, as she does not want him to be expelled because of her. For this reason, the next day, the protagonist looks for Juliet at the academy, but she flees from him, so he is forced to corner her to be able to talk and fix their problems. She really doesn't want to talk to him, and she tells him directly to his face. This ends up hurting Romeo's heart so much that he is taken to the infirmary by Hasuki. The girl notices the protagonist, so she puts aside her role as leader of the Black Dogs and takes on her role as a friend and sets out to cheer up the boy in various ways. First, she takes him to play pool, then encourages him to feed the sheep in the stable, and finally takes him to the tower of the academy to show him the sunset. After all these fun moments together, Romeo appears happy and less depressed, although Hasuki knows that it's not entirely true because she knows him so well that she knows he's pretending to be okay to try to make her feel better, which ends up having the opposite effect as she starts crying because she couldn't change her friend's mood. Faced with this, he hits himself to make her laugh, which works. Suddenly, Char arrives at the place with the clear objective of delivering homemade cookies to the protagonist that Juliet specially prepared for him. This surprises him as the cookies look good, unlike those from months ago which were completely burnt. That's why when he tastes them, he starts crying with joy because he appreciates the effort Juliet made to learn how to bake cookies just for him. After this, Romeo tells Hasuki that he wants to surprise Juliet, and what better way to do this than by celebrating her birthday as in the old times by invading the party and throwing cakes at the guests. In this way, the black dogs invade the girl's birthday party by throwing cakes at the white cats, while on Romeo's side, he goes after his goal, surprising Juliet. In the search for the girl, the protagonist is caught by Somali and intercepted by Abby, who looks completely different because his life was ruined after he was caught cheating at the sports festival. Abby wants to get revenge on Romeo for this. However, he manages to free himself from Somali by tricking her with simple words, which in turn incapacitates Abby. Similarly, the problems don't end here, as shortly after, a whole group of students corners the protagonist, but luckily, a strange boy saves him. This boy is called Kate Sith, who at first introduces himself to the boy with a little joke, which Romeo ignores. Because of this, Kate forbids his passage and reveals to him that he is actually one of the prefects of the White Cats, and along with the other prefects, they don't intend to let him escape and go see Juliet under any circumstances. Meanwhile, Juliet, not having any way to leave her room after being locked in by the prefects, thinks that the best way to escape is by jumping out the window. In this way, as the protagonist defends himself from Kate's attacks, he feels Juliet's presence behind him, so totally confident, he jumps out the window and luckily, she was on the balcony, so she takes his hand and prevents him from falling. Thus, the couple finally reunites and the boy couldn't be more grateful to her for saving him, and in passing, he greets her properly for her birthday. This brings tears to the girl's eyes as after everything that happened on this day, that was what she needed most, so she wastes no time and tells the boy her first "I love you." Obviously, he is more than happy about this, so the conversation ends with the two of them embraced. However, they are then forced to pretend to have a cake fight, which ends in a dignified tie, so after this, Romeo sends his companions to lead the White Cat's mansion. However, to their misfortune, Eru makes an appearance to accuse his brother and Juliet of being in a relationship, and the accusation is very credible since Eru shows them several pieces of evidence like Juliet's rosary or the women's underwear that was in Romeo's room. This puts the protagonist's reputation at risk as the rest of the students start to believe Eru's accusation. That's why Juliet, in order to protect her honor and dignity, challenges Romeo to a real duel with real swords. While the girl fights with all her might regardless of hurting the boy, he, for his part, refuses to hurt her. Although then he notices that the girl gives him a secret signal, so he changes his attitude and sets out to attack her with all his strength. Thus, the two face off and end up in a hospital, where although it seemed that they ended up very injured, they actually weren't injured, as secretly they planned to mutually attack each other's rosary, so it was the rosaries that received the blows. Despite this, both know that not everything ended here, as these kinds of situations can happen again. That's why the protagonist, to change the atmosphere, gives her his birthday present, which are 2 rings, one for him and one for her, symbolizing their official union as boyfriend and girlfriend. This gift is so special to Juliet that she doesn't hesitate to hug her boyfriend, to which he, upon receiving this gesture of affection, goes out of this world literally. Days later, the couple has a romantic encounter at the lake where Romeo tells her that he wants to be a prefect, as his brother was fired from his position for not fulfilling the basic rule of protecting his students. That's why the protagonist wants to take his place, although it will be a difficult job as he will have to start from the bottom helping the twins with their requests to gradually climb the ranks and reach the position of prefect. Faced with this, Juliet gives him her total support and hopes that he becomes the best prefect the Black Dogs could have, and at the same time as she looks at her ring, she hopes that he will soon become her husband, as she would love to spend the rest of her life with him, and in this way, this charming anime ends.